Okay, we're going to learn a famous Yud Aleph Nissen Maimer of the Rebbe that was said in Tavshin Yud Lamed Aleph for the Rebbe's birthday. It was given out Muga Tavshin Mem Tes. Okay, V'yayim Ashli Asiyayim, and the 11th day of the month, it speaks about the Nasiim. Nasi Livnei Asher was the tribe of Asher. To explain as follows. Even though seemingly all the 12 tribes gave the same exact korban, so the Chaydik doesn't have to be repetitious, but the Medrash and each one explains each one's kavan and each one's thing differently than all the others. Every Nasi physically brought the same korban was really different. So it says, Isa b'Medrash, Kol hashvatim l'shem golasim shal Yisrael. Every Nasi brought the korbanis based on the redemption of the Yidden, and there, L'Shem Shvachim Nikru Shmeisa. So based on that Geula, they were called the names. And based on what they were called. Okay? The names of each one of the Shvatim was called upon the redemption of the Yidden, the Medrash says. The Shem Gulasin Shal Yisrael, Kamad the Tem, like you say, V'ishru itchem kol hagoyim, V'ashru itchem, all the goyim will be praised with you, Ki yati yohatem eret chefetz amer Hashem tzvokas, that you will be a desirable land. The Pasuk says in Malachi that all the goyim are going to praise the Jews. Ashri means praise. All the goyim are going to praise the Jews. Why? Ki atam tiyu li'eret chefet, you will all be a desirable land, like Hashem says. L'shem shvachim, and for the praise, like it says, Ashri am shekacholei, Ashri am shashem lakav. Fortunate is the person that Hashem is their God, and Yeshua shall Yisrael. What is the praise of the Yidden? Al shaniv chol HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyis lahem lalakim. What was the uniqueness of, because Asher is all these things. Ashrei, Gulasin Shal Yisrael. What is the greatness? What is the praise of the Jews? The Medrash says that they chose Hashem to be their God. Okay? And Hashem chose them that they should be a precious nation. Rashi says Gula is questionable, whether it means like a treasure or whatever. So it says like this. The Shvatim have to do with Geula of Yisrael. When the Eden chose Hashem, as their God, okay, like it says in the Pasuk, Atem Tili Yam Sgula, Yisim Li Sigula. You both, Hashem picks the Jews and the Jews pick Hashem. Lefikach Shabon Nasi Asher. Lahakriv, therefore, when the Nasi of Asher came to bring the korban by the Chanukah Sabayis, Hikriv Karbani al Shem Abchira. Why did he bring the korban? The fact Shabacha Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Mikol Omas. So what was the korban, the theme of the korban of Asher? Everybody's theme was different, like we said. But physically it was the same korban, but the theme was different, the Medrash says. Therefore, what was the korban of Asher that he brought dedicating the Mishkan? The fact that the Yidden, Hashem chose the Yidden. Like it says in the Pasuk, this is what the Medrash says. So Asher's uniqueness of the korban was that Hashem chose the Yidden as his nation, and the Jews chose Hashem as their Hashem. And we need to understand, so in the beginning of the Inyan, the Medrash says, Yeshua and shall Yisrael, the praise of the Yidden was Shabachar B'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. At the beginning of the Maimon, he said, what was the praise of the Yidden? That they chose Hashem. And at the end, the Medrash said that Hashem chose them. Like which one? Seemingly just additional. And then he says, Asher, that Asher, because of the praise of Yidden, Hikr Karban Aseh, what was the inyan of his Karban, Shabach HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Yisrael. The Medrash starts off emphasizing the fact that the Yidden chose Hashem, And then at the end of the Medrash, he says that Hashem chose the Yidden. So like, why is it going both ways like this?
Is there a source of delay or a source
Gam tzarich lahavin the bechira shar davke b'shnei dvar mishaneim shava. Okay, there's another question. This whole concept that Hashem chose the Jews and that the Jews chose Hashem is difficult to understand. The word bechira, free choice, by definition means when both things are equal. If one thing is different than the next, it's not real bechira. Bechira chavshis means free choice, means two things are identical, and yet for no reason I choose one over the next. You choose one over the next. Even if you have two exact things, like you have two white cups, one's here and one's here, and I choose one over the next, it's still not real bechira, because I might like right over left, or left over right. It's still not bechira chavshis. So he says, "O shebakol echad, o shebakol echad b'em yeshmai l'shem b'zilasi." Or another way of bechira is each one has a mila the other one doesn't have, and they're seemingly equal milas that each one has at the end, and I choose one over the next. When you come along and you say that the Jews chose Hashem over all other gods, I mean, what type of bechira is that? He said, "La'avdol." How can you say the Yidden chose Hashem? I mean, what's the one's a stone and one's Hashem? This that Hashem chose the Yidden, Hari Yisrael and Nailim be'ein arich. Mikol ha'ummos, the Yidden are infinitely greater than all the other. We have a neshama that nobody else has. So what do you mean Hashem chose the Jews? The Jews are different than Goyim. You can't say there's one nation. And also he says, even though the Alter Rebbe in Tanya explains it, he said we need to understand that itself. Gam Mashakol Sebetanya, what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. The bone of Becharte Mikol Am Veloshin is the guf hachumri, the physical body. Hanid me b'chumri yosel gufi u'maseilim that looks similar to the body of Goyim. Tzorch beard, the zesh haguf the Yisrael nid me b'chitzin yosel gufi u'maseilim is not an answer to Hashem. Meaning like this. The Alter Rebbe asks a question in Tanya, Perik Memtes. What do you mean Banu B'charta? Again, Bechir. There's a Yiddish in the Neshama, there's a guy in the Neshama. What do you mean I chose? They're not the same. So the Alter Rebbe says, therefore we must say that the inyan of Bechira is on the body, not that Hashem chose the Neshama of the Jew. It's a different Neshama. That Hashem chose that this body is Jewish and this body is not Jewish. That in the body we look, and outwardly we look exactly like Goyim. You know, years ago you were able to tell a Jew by the nose and things. Today you can't. Everybody gets nose jobs and all that. You don't know in the street anymore who's Jewish and who's not Jewish. So l'chayra, in that aspect, Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that Hashem chose the body of the Jew versus the neshama of the Jew. Yeah? But he says, l'chayra, ain't a bir l'chayra negel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I mean, what does it mean that Hashem chose this body? By Hashem, it's not shaykh the word bechira. So the question is, in fact, by the way, before we go further, there's a puzzle that said, Banim atam l'Hashem Elokeichem. We're Hashem's children, right? In Parshas Re'eh. Banim atam l'Hashem Elokeichem. And then there's another concept, the Banu b'charta mikol am v'loshem. Atam b'charta mikol amin. Right? Bechira, a child, is different than somebody who's not a child. So you can't say Bechira. So the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that Bechira comes from Mitzad the Guf and Banim Atam L'Shem L'Keichem is the Neshama. The second parak of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe uses the pasuk Banim Atam L'Shem L'Keichem as a mashal for the Neshama. So the Neshama of a Yid is Banim Atam L'Shem L'Keichem. The body of the Jew comes from Bechira. So in Chassidus it explains, we're not getting into it now because I want to learn the minor. But the guf of the Jew, based on that, Because Bechira comes from such a lofty level that everything is equal. Because if good and bad are not equal, light and dark are not equal. So you can't say I choose light over dark, dark over light. So therefore, where's Bechira that two things are exactly equal? In a level of godliness where good and bad is all the same. Goyim, Jew, everything is the same. And in that level of Elokus, Hashem chose the body of a Jew. That means body, according to this, Chassidus explains, comes from a higher level than the neshama does. That's why Tchias HaMeisim is going to be primarily in the neshama, in a body like the Ramban, not like the Rambam, that's going to be out of the body. Okay.
The body of a Jew and body of a Goy are exactly the same.
Yeah, but Hashem chose that this is a Jewish body.
We're going to do mitzvahs with that. That's
The Yuv and Zabak, that's later. That's not what Hashem chose. The Yuv and Zabak Hegdim. We have to understand this by first what it says. Chelki Havaya Omna Nafshi. That my nefesh says, my Hashem is my part. Chelki Hashem, that my part is Omna Nafshi, my soul says. The Isa ben Medrash, there's a very famous Medrash that Rabbi speaks about a lot. The Medrash says like this: Moshel Melech shenichnas leMedina. A king comes into a country, vayu sham duchsin ve'ifrachen ve'seruk tudultin. Okay, with all his advisors and the senators and dignitaries.
Is there anything wrong with Esau?
No. So now, if you come into a strange country, there's tons of people, and the king comes with his entourage, and this guy says, oh, I want this guy. I want this dignitary. This guy says, I want this dignitary. Because he says he's mesmerized by all these, the glory in it. So he says, one guy says, so then the Medrash continues, there was one smart guy in the country, and he says, I want the king. Why? Because all these guys are interchangeable. One day you're a duke, one day you're not a duke. One day you're a noble, one day you're not a noble. And the king, it doesn't get changed. So what does it mean? Chalki Hashem Omra Nafshi. The Medrash says, this is the marshal that a Jew says to Hashem, Ano Nosiv Malka. I want the king. I don't want any of the... So he says, I'll explain in a second, a very interesting thing. Kain Ummah Sa'ilam, the same thing, the Ummah Sa'ilam like this. This guy picks the sun to worship. This guy, all the dignitaries. This guy picks the moon. This guy picks the sun. Aval Yisrael Eina Eivdem LaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that it said, okay? So the Medrash says like this. Everybody picks a dignitary, comes along the pikach, and then everyone's going to ask, why does it such pikchas? Every kid knows that. So the king is different than everybody else. What do you mean a pikach for? But anyway, the Rebbe once explained a lesson from chess. Lesson from chess is, chess b'chal is a brilliant game. There's a lot of heroes you learn from chess. But one of the lessons that I ever learned from chess is that a pawn, which is the foot soldier, they're not the cows, the bishops and that, they're not. It's a simple foot soldier. When he gets to the other side, he can become whatever he wants, except a king. Why? It's Einaid Movadei. A king, like it says in the Med, you can't change the king. It's one king. You could become a queen. The pawn could become a queen. There's a whole thing from the Rebbe why Dafka the pawn could do it. Nobody else could do it but the pawn. But the foot soldier is... My father, Al Rasham, used to say another interesting, a simple thing. On a chessboard, you have the different levels. Mm-hmm. When the game's over and they're put in the box, they're all the same. So after you die,
You're all laying down.
you're all laying down the same way. Okay, so he said, Yedu Adir, but that's known the question that from some Chassidus and others, even a small kid knows, why does it, the Medrash seems to imply it takes a pikches, it takes a pikeach to be able to realize that this is the king. Every kid knows that this is the king. Why do you need the pikches to pick the king? Even if the knights and dukes don't change. They're not interchangeable. That the king is greater anyway. Or like it says in the Pirush, by Shlomo HaMelech it says, the Shlomo HaMelech was head and shoulders above everybody. Shekmei shel HaMelech. I'm sorry, Shegam Shechmei shel Melech. When it says by Shlomo HaMelech, but they picked him as a king, it's pasuk said, Mishichmei ulamayla gavaya mikolam. He was head and shoulders above everybody. It doesn't mean only physically. I mean, the Torah is not telling us a beauty pageant that he was the tallest guy. Mishichmei ulamayla gavaya mikolam means like this. There's the head, which is seichel. The heart is the midas. The shoulder is the way the seichel comes into the midas, right, through the throat. The Indian is that Shlomo HaMelech was, his midas were higher than everybody else's seichel. Shigam shmatzak shich mishama midas shenimshach me'aseichel rosh matim menu hu gevei me'arosh seichel shel kol ha'am. Shebezeh or kol ha'am means even the Sodom Achi Gedolim, even the big officers, that the king is above everybody. So why la tam the kulam is chalfen? The Medrash says a very funny reason. Why is the king greater than everybody else? Because everybody else is interchangeable and the king isn't. That's the only mile of a king. The king is a different category than everybody else. So why is the Medrash, why is it using the word a pikach? It takes a pikches, a brilliance to realize that the king is unique. And why is he unique? Because he's not interchangeable. A kid knows a king is greater, and then you can have a different reason why you can. Can I explain what?
How is heart is midur?
When you get, that says the heart grows fonder. Where do you feel fear? In the heart, no. Okay. Okay. Let's learn the mind. The Vayizel, we can explain this al pi hayadua, based on what is known that that in the earlier generations, that they worshipped the constellation or the idol worshippers. Yodo, they knew mi megad for shemesh, mi megad gereshirachim, and I'll explain. Lo shem at mashpiyim, ela shakadosh baruch hu mashpi al yodam. The Rambam writes at the beginning of Savei Dezara, where did they come to worshiping idols? Like, where did that come from? What's the origin of idols? There was Adam and Chava, and there was the communication with Hashem. All of a sudden, Enesh started the concept of Avodah Zarah. Where did it come from? So the Rambam explains, the Chassidus obviously elaborates on this a lot. But the Rambam, the beginning of Avodah Zarah, says like this. At the beginning, they all believed in Hashem. But they said that, the sun gives us warmth. Certain fruits grow from the moon, like Rashi says in Chumash, and says, Bracha, mi meged to Hashemesh, mi meged gerish tirachim. Rashi says over there, and says, Bracha, certain things grow from the sun, certain things grow from the moon.
That's true.
So they said, thank you for telling that Rashi is right.
Rashi says, everybody knows that there are some vegetables that they grow in the moon.
I'm glad that you agree with Rashi, that's all. So now, what happened? So they said, let's give thanks to them. Not Chas v'Shalom instead of Hashem. Hashem sustains the world through them. So you say thank you. You should say thank you to them. So they didn't starting to worship. They understood that the hashbah comes to Hashem. They said, let's start thanking them at least. So what happens as time went on, that was the initial action of it. So that they started giving credence to the intermediaries. Then after a while they say, this is tangible, and this is not so tangible, and that's how the evolution of Avodah Zarah began. So their mistake was, they gave credence that the Mazolos have free choice. And he says, Ela shetov v'chashvu, sha'ashef asher nishpa mimeni yizbarach adei kechav Mazolos, hu b'bchirasa. What they maintained was, but the sun and the moon have the free choice to do it or not to do it. V'lo yadu asa emes, that they didn't know the truth though, she'en lam b'chira klal. They don't have any free choice whatsoever. They're only kagazim b'yad ha'chaytzef. They're only like the axe in the hand of the chopper. Put it in the modern day terms. A guy gives you a ride. You get out of the car. If you're a mensch, you say thank you. Who do you say thank you to? The guy, the driver, right? Who brought you here? The car. The car brought you here. You don't walk out of the car unless you're nuts and you say thank you to the car. You don't say thank you to the car. Or if somebody cuts you a piece of cake, you say thank you, but he didn't cut the cake, the knife cut the cake.
You say thank you to the car.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said if you're nuts. So you don't say thank you to the knife. Well, what cut the cake? The knife cut the cake. Look, you should say thank you to the knife. Why you say thank you to the person? So what's the simple logic? The knife has no free choice. You say thank you when you appreciate somebody had the ability to do it, didn't have the ability to do it, didn't have the ability to do it, and he chose to do it for you. So you say thank you on his choice that he chose to do you the favor. The knife is no free choice. When you chop a piece of wood with an axe, somebody's not going to say thank you to the axe. Because Kagarzim Yadachetz means the axe is no free choice. So the reality is the stars and the moon and the Kechav Mazolos have no free choice. So what are you thanking them for? Their mistake, the Rabbi explains, that because they maintained that they did have free choice. And therefore we have to say thank you to them. But if they don't have free choice, what are you saying thank you for? And that was the whole origin of Avodah Zarah, giving credence to things that they had their own free choice when they didn't have their own free choice. That was their mistake. But look what it led to. It led to real Avodah Zarah. So the Rebbe is saying, or he says, Ki lefitu usam, according to their mistake, that because of their, if they had free choice, that was their mistake. But if they were right, let's say, that they had the free choice, then you should thank him. Or like the Gemara has an expression, Chamra lamara, the wine belongs to the owner. Tivusa l'shakya means you give thanks to the waiter. A waiter pours you a cup of wine. Say thank you to the waiter. Okay, it's not his wine. Or you say thank you to him. Again, because he had the choice to serve you or not to serve you. So that was their mistake. Because there's credence in it, so therefore they're going to give thanks to it. Similar to what the Gemara says, the wine belongs to the owner, and you give thank you to the guy that pours it. So he says, "V'gam lefi tu'usam, shehem bali bechira," that the Chav Mazolos are people with choice. Choshu shayidei sheyabdu esam. That so what was their mistake? They said, the more we thank the sun and the